Welcome back to Faith and Hope. In our previous video, we delved into the deep-rooted causes of the First Crusade, as well as the complex conflicts between Christianity and Islam across continents. After relentless efforts, Pope Urban II succeeded in rallying Christian forces, gathering strength to march towards Jerusalem with a sacred mission to protect the Holy Sepulchre. Responding to this call, two powerful armies were formed, one of devout commoners with unwavering faith, and another of courageous knights, ever ready to fight in defense of their faith. The initial battles of the First Crusade erupted in a tense and brutal backdrop. How did these pioneers face such harsh trials? Let's journey back in time with faith and hope to uncover the heroic path and the historical upheavals that would alter the destiny of both Europe and the Holy Land. Before diving into the main content, Faith and Hope extends heartfelt gratitude to all of you, our loyal viewers who have continuously supported us on this journey to uncover these sacred and emotional chapters of history. Your support is a tremendous source of motivation, helping us strive to bring you meaningful and profound historical stories. If you enjoy this content, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss our future videos. And now, let's continue our journey with faith and hope as we explore the dramatic early battles of the First Crusade. The People's Crusade. Though this was not the first time Christian forces had marched towards the holy city of Jerusalem, history had never witnessed an expedition as vast and powerful as this. Previously, such journeys were limited to the noble class and resolute knights, those familiar with battle and trained under strict discipline. However, the First Crusade changed everything. For the first time, a vast army from all levels of society joined, outnumbering even the noble forces. This was truly a people's crusade, a surprising journey that would leave an indelible mark on the history of faith. Yet, a large army does not necessarily mean an effective fighting force. Pope Urban II understood better than anyone that faith was the deep source of strength within the people of Europe. He knew that, for the sake of the Holy Land, their fierce faith could transform into an unshakable power, driving them forward. But there was a vast gap between common people and seasoned warriors. While the people might be passionate and willing to sacrifice for an ideal, could they truly face the brutal realities of war? Their freedom, unbound by military commands, could lead to chaos within the ranks. Urban II faced a paradox. The sheer numbers of the people were both an advantage and a significant risk, like a ticking bomb at the heart of the Crusader army. He spent many nights wrestling with this, pondering how to turn the power of faith into a disciplined and steadfast fighting force. Ultimately, he made a bold decision to allow the people's army to march and fight alongside the elite knights. This was a strategy within a strategy, a tactic Urban II believed would strengthen the Crusader forces. The knights, seasoned warriors with iron discipline, would not only fight but also ignite the people's spirit, guiding and leading them. The people's intense faith was like a torch ready to burst into flames, and the knights would be the ones to light it, creating an immense firestorm capable of sweeping away all opposition. It was a risky move, but if successful, it would be a powerful surge to protect the holy city and uphold the faith of all Christendom. With this daring plan, Urban II not only laid the foundation for a historic journey, but also stirred an unprecedented strength within the hearts of the people of Europe, making the First Crusade a legend that transcended religious meaning to touch the hearts and spirit of an entire era. However, human plans often cannot match the will of heaven. According to Pope Urban III's plan, both armies, the elite knights and the vast people's army, were set to depart together on August 15, 1096, coinciding with the Feast of the Assumption, a sacred day when believers hold that the soul and body of the Virgin Mary were taken up to heaven. But things did not go as intended. The People's Crusade, under the leadership of Peter the Hermit, had set out months earlier, igniting the first flame of this historic expedition. Peter the Hermit, a passionate and charismatic preacher, became an inspiring figure for thousands, despite not being officially appointed by the Pope or the Council of Clermont. Through his fiery sermons and powerful influence, Peter convinced a vast number of peasants, along with minor nobles lacking military training, to journey east with a sacred belief, though they were unprepared for battle or the terrain. History remembers Peter the Hermit as a figure of unparalleled impact, who instilled the dream of the crusade in the hearts of many. The First Crusader army, led by Peter, was a diverse assembly. From minor nobles, simple peasants, to common folk who had never even heard of Jerusalem. Yet, under Peter's passionate and determined leadership, they willingly set off, taking the first steps of the crusade with an undying resolve. The First Crusade was officially launched by the People's Crusade, a spontaneous force filled with fervor and a desire to defend their faith. Although they lacked military skills, knowledge of the Holy Land, and faced countless dangers, they pressed forward with courage and absolute faith. Their first steps marked the beginning of a historic journey, opening the tragic and legendary chapter of the Crusade. The March of Peter and the People's Crusade. After leading the People's Crusade out of France, Peter the Hermit quickly marched eastward, carrying a sacred faith and the fervent hope of liberating the Holy Land. Before long, they reached Germany and gathered in the city of Cologne on April 12, 1096. There, Peter organized numerous inspiring sermons, not only to awaken Christian faith, but also to impart the noble meaning of the crusade journey. Ultimately, his main goal remained to recruit more soldiers willing to enter the battlefield. However, while Peter sought to pause in Cologne to strengthen the forces, the French nobles and soldiers in the army were eager to advance immediately. The German commander, Walter Sansavoir, also known as Walter the Penniless, a poor but battle-hardened knight, also did not wish to linger in Cologne. He feared it might negatively impact the local population and the area's stability. Despite having no lord or vassals under his command, Walter's skills and experience made him a formidable warrior. To prevent any potential fractures within the Crusader army, Peter decided to continue marching east. Yet, as Pope Urban II had feared, the People's Crusade was poorly disciplined and organized, posing a significant challenge. A small, impatient group within the army broke off, marching faster than the rest, heading straight into Hungary without waiting for Peter's orders. They approached the banks of the Sava River, the border of the Byzantine Empire, believing they would be welcomed as liberators. But reality was harsh. The Byzantine governor in this area, confused by an undisciplined army with no clear identifying marks, could not determine their allegiance or whether he should welcome them. Concerned that they could be a potential threat, he denied them entry, forcing the People's Crusade to endure hunger and thirst for days. Facing exhaustion and severe food shortages, the People's Army had no choice but to resort to looting in the Byzantine borderlands. These raids quickly turned disastrous as the local population responded with fierce resistance, resolutely defending their territory. Bloody clashes erupted, and ultimately, the rogue Crusader forces were routed by the very people of Byzantium. To warn and deter others, 16 captured Crusaders were hung before the castle gates, their bodies left exposed as a grim reminder of the fate awaiting intruders. The People's Crusade, though brimming with fervent enthusiasm, now realized that the journey eastward was far from a simple adventure. They faced brutal reality and the harsh challenges they had not foreseen, opening a tragic chapter and serving as a warning for the rest of the expedition. After struggling for many days on their arduous journey, the vast army led by Peter the Hermit finally reached the city of Nice, where they received provisions and rest as they awaited news from Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire. Earlier, a smaller contingent had already shed blood at the Byzantine border, while Peter's main force of around 40,000 had only departed Cologne on April 20th. They patiently marched eastward, their massive columns stretching for miles, followed by a smaller accompanying force. When the army reached the banks of the Danube River, the mighty river that spans Europe, they decided to split their forces. One group chose to travel by boat along the river, while the others continued on foot, traversing vast forests and plains. They crossed Hungarian territory without resistance and eventually regrouped on the banks of the Danube at the border with Belgrade. However, upon reaching Belgrade, the People's Crusade faced a horrific sight. 16 Crusaders had been hanged outside the city gates, a warning from the Byzantine authorities to deter undisciplined intruders. The death of these soldiers served as a stark reminder of the brutal nature of their journey. The Crusaders initially approached the city cautiously, maintaining discipline to avoid further unnecessary conflict. Yet things did not go as expected. While resting, a group of Crusaders visited a shoe shop to make purchases. A dispute over prices quickly erupted, with a few heated words escalating into a tense standoff. Unexpectedly, what seemed like a minor quarrel spiraled into a violent riot, sparking clashes throughout the city. Incited by the tense atmosphere, the Crusader army lost control, and in a fit of rage, they launched a direct assault on Belgrade, turning the city into a bloody battlefield. The consequences of this conflict were devastating, with around 4,000 Hungarian civilians killed at the hands of the Crusader forces. This act not only escalated tensions, but also cast a dark shadow, fueling hostility in the territories the Crusaders passed through on their journey. More than ever, this incident heightened the caution of lands along the path to the Holy Land, transforming the People's Crusade into a chaotic journey marked by blood and tears. After the initial assault on the city, the People's Crusade temporarily withdrew to regroup, but had no intention of stopping. Peter the Hermit's forces swiftly prepared for a second attack, this time fueled by growing rage and fury with every step. In this assault, the city was laid to waste, and all efforts of local resistance were drowned in a sea of blood. After destroying the Byzantine border city, the Crusaders moved onward toward Nis with an even fiercer determination. On July 3rd, the commander of Nis, facing a dangerous situation, proposed a deal. He would provide food and an escort to help the Crusaders continue their journey to Constantinople, on the condition that they leave the city immediately. Peter agreed to this offer and ordered his troops to depart the following morning, hoping to avoid another bloody confrontation. But unfortunately, during their march, a group of German soldiers clashed with local citizens. Tensions escalated, and in a fit of anger, they set several houses along the road ablaze. Flames from these houses rose high, intensifying the situation and quickly spiraling out of Peter's control. The commander of Nice, left with no choice, immediately mobilized the city's entire military force to retaliate, turning the Crusaders' march into a catastrophe. Under fierce assault from the local forces, the Crusader army disintegrated. Countless Crusaders fell, with estimates suggesting that around 10,000 perished in this bloody confrontation. The survivors, exhausted and disoriented, regrouped at Bela Palanka, continuing their march southward. On July 12th, they reached Sofia, where they were met and cautiously escorted by the Byzantine forces. After months filled with danger and loss, the People's Crusade finally arrived in Constantinople on August 11th. Though their journey was far from over, their arrival at the capital of the Byzantine Empire marked a new chapter in the Crusades. A journey fraught with chaos, bloodshed, and challenges that seemed insurmountable. As soon as he heard that the Crusader army was approaching Constantinople, Byzantine Emperor Alexius I Comnenus could not hide his joy. He hoped that this would be a formidable force, a disciplined army led by brave knights ready to join him in the fight against the Turks. However, Alexius's joy quickly faded as he realized that this was not the army he had anticipated. Before him was not an elite band of knights, but a disorganized crowd, mostly peasants and commoners, lacking experience and discipline. His initial excitement gradually gave way to concern. As a king, Alexius I found himself in a difficult situation. If he allowed this army to stay within the city, he would face a major challenge when the regular noble Crusader forces arrived later. Constantinople's resources would be insufficient to provide food and shelter for both armies. On the other hand, if he refused them, he risked being seen as disrespectful to the Crusaders, which could strain his relationship with the nobles and knights arriving afterward. While deliberating, Emperor Alexius devised a clever plan. Instead of outright refusal, he decided not to let the Crusaders enter the city, but still offered them necessary support. Alexius secretly directed the army to cross the Bosphorus Strait, separating Constantinople from Turkish-held lands, so they could begin their expedition without troubling the city. Some historians believe that Alexius tried to persuade Peter the Hermit to wait outside the city, hoping to delay until the organized noble forces arrived to cross the strait together. He understood well that a chaotic and unorganized force like Peter's would be no match for the seasoned Turkish troops. However, with his fiery zeal, Peter insisted on crossing the Bosphorus, determined to begin the fight immediately. It remains uncertain whether the Crusaders' decision to cross the Bosphorus was entirely influenced by the Byzantine emperor. Still, history records that Peter's army launched their campaign hastily and, to some extent, recklessly. Their enthusiastic yet careless steps led to a bitter end. After crossing the Bosphorus Strait, the People's Crusade, led by Peter the Hermit, advanced swiftly into Turkish territory, driven by fervor and the desire to conquer. Initially, they easily captured a few small Turkish fortresses, and the French contingent under Peter's direct command even approached the city of Nicaea. However, the fortified city of Nicaea, with its towering walls and deep moat, was beyond the Crusaders' ability to breach. Unable to launch a direct assault, they resorted to looting villages and the surrounding countryside, leaving behind scenes of devastation and instability. Meanwhile, another contingent of about 6,000 German Crusaders seized the city of Zaragoza, transforming it into a critical outpost to expand their control and continue raids on nearby rural areas. The Crusaders' plundering and destruction quickly angered the Muslim authorities. Turkish King Kilij Arslan could no longer remain passive and swiftly mobilized his forces, personally leading an elite army to suppress the uprising. Against the professional Turkish forces, armed and rigorously disciplined, the weaknesses of the People's Crusade became immediately apparent. The Crusaders' disorganized and undisciplined ranks were quickly encircled and routed by the Turkish soldiers wielding their crescent-shaped swords. The city of Zaragoza, where the German contingent was stationed, was soon completely isolated and besieged by Turkish forces, cutting off any escape routes. As the siege tightened, the Crusaders were severed from all supplies, left without water and food. Besieged in a state of desperation, the Crusaders in Zaragoza felt the suffocating pressure of deprivation. The city became a vast prison, with each passing day serving as a grim reminder of their vulnerability and despair. Hunger and thirst grew so unbearable that some soldiers, driven to extremes, drank the blood of mules and even their own urine to survive, as the water supply had been entirely cut off. Finally, seeing that the Crusaders were no longer able to resist, the Turks launched a decisive attack and swiftly reclaimed the fortress. The entire Crusader army was captured. Some soldiers were forced to convert to Islam and were exiled to Khorasan, while those who steadfastly held on to their faith were immediately executed. Such was the tragic fate of the German Crusader soldiers. The situation of the French Crusader contingent led by Peter was not much better. After capturing a few small fortresses, Peter quickly led his army to raid the outskirts of Anatolia. But when he received news that the German contingent had been annihilated by the Turks, he decided to press on with the campaign, unaware that they were marching into a Turkish ambush. After marching about 3 miles, Peter's Crusaders entered a narrow path and then into a small valley. Filled with fervor, they advanced without realizing they had fallen into a Turkish trap. Immediately, a hail of arrows rained down on the Western warriors. The valley was too narrow for retreat, and in a short time, Peter's army was crushed. The Turks soon closed in, slaughtering or capturing all remaining Crusaders. Those who surrendered were spared, but thousands who resisted were slain. A few thousand managed to escape and withdrew to an abandoned castle, but in the end, they too were overrun by the Turks. In light of this, the Byzantine emperor intervened, dispatching an army to cross the border, rescue the survivors, and escort them back to Constantinople. Thus, the First People's Crusade ended in complete failure, a painful defeat for an undisciplined and untrained force. However, this was only the beginning of the Crusade campaign. The regular armies of knights and nobles had yet to join the battle. Stay tuned for the next episodes in our Crusade series to discover how the war changes when knights and nobles take to the field. What are your thoughts after watching this video? Leave a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe to follow more videos on our channel. For now, goodbye and see you next time.